A parliamentary inquiry.
Gentleman's recognized.
Is blatant hypocrisy a violation of the rules of the House? The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess, is recognized to yield time for someone who might actually want to debate the bill. Mr. Speaker, does whining come out of my time?
Vintage Barney Frank, one of the most outspoken and distinctive members of Congress. This week, Congressman Frank announced this term, his 16th, will be his last. He's retiring after more than 30 years in the House of Representatives, and he joins me now to discuss the Washington that he will leave behind. Thank you for joining me, Congressman. Just want to ask you, not just the Washington you're leaving behind, but the Washington that some people hope will get back to work. You're obviously being a partisan for your team, but so many people talk about you also as a skilled negotiator, as somebody who can actually legislate and get deals done. Is that going to be possible over the next, let's say, 12, 11 months until the election?
Well, ironically, it will be for the next 12 months. In general, the problem is this, and people sometimes forget, if you're in England and they have an election, whoever gets a majority in the House of Commons on Wednesday is the Prime Minister on Thursday. We have a very different constitution. People seem to forget that. Under the American Constitution, at any one time, we're governed by the people who ran in 3 elections, 2006, 2008 for the president, 2010. Unusually, the American people made very different decisions, the people who voted, because there was a drop-off in the electorate. The people who got elected in 2008 have very different views from those on the whole from 2010, with a broader difference. But here's what's happening. Those who were elected in 2010, who generally not wanted the government to play a positive role in our lives, who have felt that whether it's the environment or transportation, healthcare, collective action is more likely to be damaged than not. I think that's terribly wrong, but there's a great conflict. They would be the ones who would say, okay, we're not going to let anything happen. We're going to say no. We're not going to raise the debt limit. We're not going to do this. In general, the people who want to say no, the people who want to do the veto, have a certain leverage because total inaction, chaos is on their side.
So is that
but
what you...
unusually, in this coming year...
Sorry, I didn't...
Let me just say, in this coming year...
Is that what you see, gridlock? Do you see gridlock in this coming year? Will some of the business that the people hope will happen? Will it happen or not?
No, well, that's what I was trying to say, is that unusually this year, inertia has now become a force for action in an odd way. If nothing happens this year, if Congress passes no legislation, 2 things will happen. All of the Bush tax cuts will expire at the end of the year. Everybody's taxes will go up, lower income, middle income, and the wealthy. Secondly, the sequestration will go into effect, and there will be broad cuts across the board in which, for the first time in my memory, military spending reductions will be greater than domestic because of the way it works. What that means is this. Those on the conservative side who control the House, if they continue to say no deal unless you do everything we want, and we say, fine, we're ready to compromise, but we're not just going to give in to you, then taxes go up on everybody and military spending is cut hard. Therefore, in this unusual circumstance, where bad things from the conservative standpoint will happen if nothing happens, there will have to be a deal. So I think there will be a deal. And our position, I believe, the president's articulated it, we are for extending tax cuts for most people, but not for the top 1 or 2% where we can make over a 10-year period hundreds of billions. Secondly, I think Democrats, I'd be ready to live with the military cuts and the sequester, but I think there would be a majority of Democrats saying, you know what, we want some military reductions. We don't need to continue to protect Germany against Stalin, but we'll compromise. So I think you are going to see this year, because of the consequences of inaction, an unusual situation where there will be action on both an amendment to the sequester and to the taxes.
All right, Congressman Frank, and turning to the actual general election right now, you probably heard our roundtable discussing the ups and downs of the various candidates, with Newt Gingrich being most certainly up right now. Now, you did say, and I'm not sure when you said it, but you said that Newt would be the best thing to happen to Democrats since Barry Goldwater. So for the post-Goldwater generation, what precisely do you mean there?
He would be a very weak candidate. He would lose heavily, and a lot of Democrats would win races in which there would be a great fall-off. I think Newt Gingrich is the anti-candidate. The split between the extremely conservative sector of America, which is the Republican presidential primary electorate, and the rest of the country is very clear. And I believe that a man with Newt Gingrich's vulnerabilities. Look, if he wins the nomination, it will be because Mitt Romney is understandably seen as insufficiently conservative, because Mitt is insufficiently anything, if you believe in principles. And that will allow Gingrich to overcome a whole lot. But I have to tell you, Christiane, as I look at the Republican debate, I've been casting the Wizard of Oz. I mean, obviously, Mitt Romney is the Tin Woodman without a heart, and Rick Perry is clearly the scarecrow. Let me just say about Rick Perry, he illustrates the point that what's scary about some people is not what they don't know, but what they know that isn't true. I just heard this ad in which he said, some liberals say faith is a sign of weakness. That is just bizarrely delusional. I don't know any political liberal who thinks faith is a sign of weakness.
All right.
Newt's the Wizard of Oz.
Well, let me ask you.
Newt is the one who...
Go ahead.
I just think there's nothing there. I think he's ginned up this whole big thing. But when people focus on him as opposed to him being the not Romney, this is a man who served as Speaker. He was very much an insider. He was twice reprimanded by the House. By the way, I was reprimanded by the House. One of the reasons I wouldn't run for president. The problem with the marriages, there was this incredible hypocrisy of criticizing Chris Dodd and me because we weren't doing anything about Freddie Mac when we were in the minority. We did do it when we were in the majority. And he was taking money from them when the Republicans were in the majority to make sure that nothing happened. I just think he is an obvious weak candidate.
But let me ask about the Democratic campaign message and the election message. You also said the problem in politics is this. You don't get any credit for disaster averted, going to the voters and saying, boy, things really suck, but if it wasn't for me, they would suck worse. That's not a platform on which anyone has ever gotten elected in the history of the world. So how do you think the Obama campaign is going to get reelected?
Well, that is true, and that's our dilemma. We inherited this terrible economy, President Obama did, and clearly the actions taken by President Obama, by Congress when the Democrats controlled it, by the Federal Reserve, a very well-performing institution that's been unfairly demonized, things are better than they would have been. But you don't win on that. Here are two things. First of all, I think this issue of whether or not you continue to whether you cut taxes for the wealthiest people and instead cut back on Social Security, Medicare, environmental protection, that doesn't work. And secondly, I think the Republicans are misreading, they're under cultural lag, attacking Barack Obama for pulling out of Iraq, saying you want to do more in Afghanistan. I think the American people now understand that we are overcommitted internationally, that we don't have in terrorism a threat equivalent to international nuclear-armed communism. And I think this insistence on more and more military spending at the expense of domestic spending will be a mistake.
Congressman Frank, thank you very much indeed.